You're listening to Serena Grasser Podcast. If you would like to support my work, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/Serena Grasser. The next story is called An East London Sweet Shop.
Perhaps it's only a phenomenon in England, but when I looked out of the front window of my house, it was a grey, wet day. Yet, when I veered my head in the other direction and looked out over the back garden, the sun was shining through. How could it be? I was in the same place at the same time, merely just veering my head, and I could see two different days. I guess I had a choice then of which direction I wanted to look, exactly as we do in life. It was the early 70s, and I was living in a small 2-bedroom house with my 5 siblings, my mother, father, and 2 cats. We had an outdoor toilet and no central heating. The house was overcrowded like many of the houses along the terraced line street, and life was most definitely not easy. But in saying that, in the hardship, there lied positive aspects if you looked for them. We would play outside on the streets for hours with our neighbours. At that time in London, we knew our neighbours. There was a real sense of community. We all lived in the same conditions and passed by the same daily hardships, and with that came a real sense of companionship. We were in that life together. I guess you could say I felt like I belonged there, and that in itself was a good thing about our lives at that time, because some people pass through their whole life without ever feeling like they belong. There were 2 main highlights to my life at that time. Firstly, it was our 2 cats. On that day, as I sat veering my head between the view out the sunny window and the grey wet one, the cats played in front of me on the carpet. Socks, who was the naughtier of the 2 cats, had dragged a feather in from outside, and just watching the enjoyment he got from smacking it around with his paws and his wild pouncing predator jumps would make anyone on their saddest days start to laugh. I considered going out to the outdoor toilet, but it was difficult to work out if it was actually raining or not. I decided to just put it off for another while. Convenience was not something we had much of at that time. The second highlight of my life at that time was the sweet shop at the end of my street. Picking the selection of sweets from the big glass jars and holding the brown paper bag in my hand filled me with excitement. I tried to make them last as long as I could. Inasmuch as I liked them, I would give 1 each to my sibling, and then the rule was they had to stop bothering me, and I could enjoy the rest of what was left in the bag on my own. It was in that sweet shop that I had my first lesson in manifestation. Christine, an elderly lady, worked at the sweet shop. I still remember her so clearly. I always thought she was so nicely dressed. She always wore pearls and brought a touch of Hollywood glam to the sweet shop. On her jacket, she rotated between various brooches depending on the day. For some reason, the one that sticks out in my mind was her parrot brooch. It was just amusing to me that there would be parrot-inspired jewellery in London. It was by no means a tropical place. I suppose nobody wanted to wear a brooch of a big crow. Christine always wore clip-on big earrings too. I sometimes wondered how they didn't weigh down her ears all day, but I guess she was used to them. I don't think I ever saw her without her bright lipstick perfectly intact, which just made her smile seem so welcoming. There wasn't many adults around me back then that would take the time to pay much attention to a child, but with Christine, I always felt really seen by her. There was a feeling that she was actually interested in what I had to say. In some ways, I guess you could say that she treated me like an adult, which was very unusual for me at the time. Some adults had the view that children were to be seen and not heard. Others were just too caught up in their own lives and thoughts to really pay attention to a child. I told Christine that I hadn't been sure whether to come or not because I couldn't work out if the rain had stopped.
Out one window it had looked sunny, but the other looked wet.
Oh, well, what you do in that case is you choose the better window to look out. In life too, look in both directions so you have all the information, but spend more time looking at the good direction. Life will be easier for you then.
And then she said something that was perhaps the most important part of it.
And remember, only you can choose which way to look. Nobody else can do it for you.
I went through life always applying her logic to every situation I found myself in. What I found was, it gave me a sense of power. In the midst of challenging circumstances and hardship, I felt a sense of power. What did I manifest, you might wonder? Well, to me, it wasn't about the obvious things that people think of. To be a millionaire, to have a flashy car, to live in a mansion. It wasn't really about materialism at all. It was something much deeper than that. Don't get me wrong, coming from where I came from in East London, I know that money is important. I know only too well that there are people that pass days being hungry as they don't have enough money. So, of course, logically, money is what they think they need to get out of the hardship, and it certainly does play a part. But what I've learnt is the most important of all is, in fact, mindset. There are people with mansions, flashy cars and filthy rich, but they are still miserable. They haven't found happiness with those things. Because in their own minds, they still look at all they don't have, all that they are missing, and it's an endless cycle of misery. The only way out is mindset. And the best part of it is, you are not just a victim to outside uncontrollable circumstances anymore. You are in control because you choose which direction to look. And with that, you'll find the silver lining on any cloud, solace on the bad days, your struggles will shrink and life will be happier.